Anyway, so what happened? When the teacher came in and she's welcoming him and saying with a big smile, I'm glad you are back here and we'll now learn Hungarian. And where are the Jewish children? And she goes like this, and we get up and they say, there is a door, would you please leave? No Jewish kids will be learning anymore in our schools. That was the end of my dream of ever learning. Okay, so what else was I going to tell you about?
Oy, oy, oy. And then Gita, oy, that's unbelievable. And
I want to tell you those two vignettes.
Yeah.
Okay. I went through Auschwitz, Birkenau 5 months, and the labor camp. Also, a group of 20,000 Jewish families, Jewish people, families, were taken one Shabbat morning from their homes and taken to the Ukraine, where they were shot, each one of them, into big
mass grave.
mass graves.
Oy, oy, oy.
Nobody survived, I'm sure. Most of them were shot. That's families with children. I had a cousin who was the son of a Rav, who was my uncle, my mother's sister, and the son lived somewhere else. He married into another town, probably into our area somewhere. It was a family that was taken there with 8 children, the oldest one of whom was 14 years old. And he was shot, wounded, but not shot dead. And he was one of maybe 2 and 3 who did not survive, but survived this massacre. And because he was 14 and he wanted to live too much and not to climb over the dead bodies of his mother and father and seven little children. And he managed at age 14 to send a letter to his grandfather, who was my uncle, was his grandfather, and to say in Yiddish, save me. And he described in the letter what happened to him. And how did he manage to get a paper and a pencil or a pen and an envelope and everything he needs, and to write a letter? And how can he know at age 14? He was all his life in a yeshiva, in a cheder, that within viewing distance to this mass grave was a Hungarian military base that was in charge of the Jewish boys that were taken from our area from age 18 on into so-called Jewish slave laborers, platoons. And they were taken to the Ukraine, to Russia, where the war was, the front was, when Hitler attacked the Russians. 60,000 Jewish boys in their 20s and up were killed, died of natural causes, like typhoid fever, and like freezing.
From the cold.
To those people who survived the cold, who survived this work and the weather there, and they came home without toes, just froze with need to cut off, to amputate legs because they were frozen.
It was from frostbite. Yeah.
So this was another thing. I mean, and then 1944, a year before the end of the war, that's when Hitler invited two days before that fatal date of March 19th, so March 17th, I think I'm correct there, but I'm not sure. He invited him to his home, Berchtesgaden, beautiful place in Bavaria, a high place, where he has his summer home. And while he was there, he was going crazy, because in 1943, 45, the war was over. 1943, Hitler announced that Europe is Judenrein, except for Hungary, which was his partner. And we were sitting there for 5 years, and we went through one more thing that they didn't tell you that happened, my going back to school, and the boys being induced into their slave labor camps, and the people who were killed into the mass graves, and something else happened. A Christian man came into the house, into my father's store, and said he was sent from the city hall, and he wants to stay here. And my father understood it. I wouldn't have, but my father knew what he was talking about. This is Aryanization.
Oy.
And after a few weeks, when my father taught him, he asked my father to help him learn how to run a store, because the stores were all in the hands of Jews, the business. And then he said, after a few weeks, I know it now, you can go. And he stayed there in our property, in our whatever we had was there, was his. And my father came, all the Jews who owned businesses were asked to turn in their licenses to operate businesses. The whole Jewish population became, very few did other things than that. My father rounded us up, the children and my mother, and said, children, we have no more income. We didn't know any Yiddish. Anyway, he said, "Wir haben nicht mehr Parnasse."
No more living, no more way to earn a living.
And I was 12, 13, and I understood this so well. I grasped what the meaning was of this. I never asked, where did our Parnasse come from? I didn't have to. Whatever we needed, we had. Baruch Hashem. We had enough to give Friday night people who were stranded, to invite them to the Shabbos meal, and to give three Bucharam in the Cheder. My mother committed herself to give 3 boys a meal once a week, because the yeshiva did not provide me food. So 3 boys came once a week in the middle of the week. My mother made sure that the food was very rich and nourishing, and she gave them a package to take home to have for breakfast and for supper as well. Baruch Hashem, and we gave a lot of Gemilas Chesed, and there was enough. And now my father can tell us no more income. And I was thinking, God, who will put bread on the table? You cannot imagine that. It was terrible. My father and mother went to the 2 local hoteliers, who were our friends, Jewish people. Everybody was friends, especially the business people were friends. And they said, we have no longer any income, we have a beautiful apartment with many beds, and if you have an overflow of tourists who will want to see the beautiful mountains of Karpatorus and other sites, if you have an overflow, sell them to us. And from then on, we were not in possession of our house because our rooms were all filled with people. And we had the laundry lady, the laundress, who was our laundress before I was born, long before. And she had to strip the beds and wash them by hand every day and iron them and put them back. And my mother cooked for them. And in the end, Baruch Hashem, we had food on the table. But it was a very hard switch. It was a hard lesson to learn. How from one day to another. And what did the other people do? Everybody lost his parnassah. There's a big black market that developed there. You know, people sent agricultural products to the heart of Hungary, to real Hungary. We were not real Hungary. We were just, we just freshly, what's the word? Kvushim.
Okay.
Kavush, it's...
captured, in a way.
Captured, right. So,
wow.
Okay. Now, what I want to tell you, so we went through the lagers that I told you, 1944, 3 weeks, it was March 19th, the Germans came in, the Nazis came in, and it was like a death sentence. We knew this is a death sentence.
You knew.
We felt it, we knew it. And so the whole procedure I told you about, and now I want to tell you about the end. So first we were in Birkenau, and my mother squeezed herself in among the young women who were selected the first day when we arrived. And at that time, 90% of the travelers who came in this car, 90% of them were taken the same day to their death in the gas chambers. So if there were, let's say, 2,500 people who came in this wagon, probably that's what the number, then 2,250, let's say, was the 90%. That's how many were killed in the gas chambers that were in Birkenau. There were 4 gas chambers, each one could take 2,000 people. But this was used around the clock for 2 months because the Hungarian Jews were taken last, and how many there were, there remained about 500 500 and 30,000 Jews left in Hungary, and they were taken in 2 months. From the end of Pesach until from end of May till end of June, were taken and killed. Most of them were killed in Auschwitz, Birkenau. And it was terrible how the whole process was. I told you about it. And then five months later, in Birkenau, when we didn't do anything, only stood in roll call twice a day, in which they did selections, in which my mother was really very, very much at risk that they will look at her and say, come with us to her death. And it didn't happen then, but it happened. We, at one such selection, we couldn't stand it anymore. We didn't worry about ourselves at all. We passed every selection. We were young, we were brought up on very good food and well taken care of. And we knew, even though we were losing weight, and we knew that on the food that we were getting, one piece of bread, 200 grams of bread a day, a gram of bread a day, and an empty kind of soup. That was our food for the first 5 months, and later also. Throughout, that on this, we could not be healthy forever, but we stood up to it. My mother was a difficult thing and difficult case, and she was taken away from us when we promised ourselves that the first opportunity that we'll have to leave Auschwitz, we will. We must leave Auschwitz. We cannot stand these fears and anxieties all the time about mother. And after there was one such case where they actually picked out my mother and took her away. The first time she was picked out to be sent to the gas chambers. She was also picked up and thrown into a little room, and she found herself some piece of furniture behind which she hid. And the others that were selected out, 500 girls from our barrack, 500 young girls were taken away out of 1,200 who occupied a barrack. And my mother, after they were taken away, and my mother stayed there and came over to us, white as snow, crying. She never cried. She was also always encouraging us. You will see, everything will be okay. Children, you don't have to. Hashem is there. And this time she was crying. And so about 2 weeks later, Isru Chag Simchat Torah, somebody called out, we're looking for 200 young, healthy girls, women, to work, for a transport, and whoever wants to come, please line up outside. And we lined up, and she was always pulled out, and she always managed to come back. We managed to take a shower and to sit down to dry up because there were no towels. And so we had to sit down in a room, 200 girls in a big circle, and I say to myself, Tehei Hasha Zot Shat Rachamim, because we are in very grave danger. And I said, Baruch Hashem, am I still with us? Am I still with us? We said to each other and to my mother, we are going to take a calculated risk, but we'll have to get out of here because this is unbearable. And she agreed with us. And then three SS came and pointed to 8 women and get up and get out, come with us. And we stayed there in the circle and stunned, just absolutely stunned. And my mother had no chance to turn around, or the other 8, 7, turn around and say, goodbye, children, God watch over you. Nothing, not even goodbye. They left, we thought, we know where they are being taken. They took us to a labor camp. For 7 months, Mother would not have been able to live there for a week. It was so harsh, terribly harsh. But we survived the 7 months, the 6 months yet, let's say. Then we were doing spare parts to aeroplanes, very serious work. Taken to a place, very nice 3 cabins with individual bunk beds, like 2 stories. In Birkenau, we had 3 flat boards. We were 3 meters long and maybe 180 centimeters wide, and we slept there on our sides, 12 women on one side. If we had to turn over in the night because we were cramped, somebody had to get out to make room to turn around. But here, with individual bunks this big, and it had, over there it was plain boards, wooden boards. Here we had some straw covered up, little straw sacks under us, and a blanket. Everybody, wonderful. And the bench and the table. We didn't see a table and a chair for 5 months now. This is Gan Eden, it had to be. And then we were taken to work, and we were taken to work an hour of walking in snow and sleet and no shoes, practically no shoes, no hats, no scarves, no underwear, just a little dress and a little coat. And this weather, no gloves, of course. We went for an hour of walk, then 12 hours of work, no interval in between to rest, because we didn't have what to eat anyway.
They never gave you food to eat or to drink?
They did. A piece of bread in the morning.
And nothing in the afternoon, or?
We didn't need a drink. We didn't need a drink at all. I never craved drink. I don't remember when I drank any drink. But we didn't have, if you are a doctor, we didn't have 1 ounce of protein food in 1 year, total year. I don't know what happened later. We didn't have later either. Maybe not until we got home. Maybe a year and a half. We had our first bite of chicken or meat or something like, or cheese or fish. Anyway, you heard all this, right? So I'm going to my vignettes. So one day we were liberated. And it was not something that gave us joy, or we gave plötzlich, suddenly we feel we want to sing or cry and say hallelujah, nothing like that. We were totally, totally exhausted, physically and emotionally. And what other thing is it?
And when you met your mother again, when you were reunited with your mother, that must have been very emotional for you when you saw your mother again, when you were reunited.
What do you think?
Yeah.
But my sister and I, when they took away my mother, and we got out, and we got the different old dress, but the clean one, and I was standing there with my sister and my cousin Lily, who was our age, and her mother was also taken away with my mother. And we said to each other, we are not going to cry. We are not going to talk about our mothers. God must help us. And we didn't talk about her. But we found her, I told you, by a train station. But in the end, okay, so we came home, all right, I'll skip. And we found my mother and my sister, Edith, who was taken by the Hungarians when the German came in. She also managed to come home to Hust. And she was also in Auschwitz, but she was alone. She had nobody there. It was very hard on her, and she never saw my father either. We didn't see him either from the first day when we arrived in Auschwitz. So it wasn't a long time since Etu was taken away that we all lost my father. But still we were with him in the most crucial moments of our lives. And we were with him for the Seder. And she was already missing there. Anyway.
Can I just ask you, when you were in Auschwitz, in the selection, did you ever see Mengele, the terrible Mengele?
I wouldn't have heard about him. I wouldn't have heard about him. He became a big name
afterwards,
after the war.
But it's possible.
But I didn't have anything to do with
But
him.
Possibly he was there when you came for the selection.
I was telling a story to my cousin today, because I was telling her that two articles in the newspapers. One,
I saw it. One is
about the Greek Jews, Saloniki Jews, and the one who remained alive.
Yeah.
And he's what's the name? Pfizer's chief medicine maker. That's one thing. And I told him another story, which is told a lot in Auschwitz. When I visit Auschwitz, the people who talk, the madrichim, the guides, know the history thoroughly. And they have these special issues that they talk about, the Greek issue. The Greeks died in the largest numbers, the largest proportions, because they didn't know Yiddish as the other Europeans know, or they weren't educated in German, so they didn't understood what the Germans were saying, asking them to do. They didn't understand what they had to do. As simple as that. Many, almost all died. But there was one story when we passed Auschwitz, and there is the barrack number 10, where the experiments are carried out. And these are experiments on twins.
This is what Mengele was doing.
He was part
of it, yeah.
He was leading the research.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't tell you the kind of stories that we heard, that they that they did there. I wouldn't tell you because you really want to die when you hear those stories. But this is one story with about a young Greek girl who was taken, and she may have been pregnant, or I don't know. But she found herself, she was being investigated, researched by Mengele. And one day, she was Greek, and she had had a boyfriend. And the story, if you read in the Jerusalem Post, was that this was a city, Saloniki, which had a port, a harbor. And most of the Jews were working at that harbor.
It was closed on Shabbat.
They
The
were
harbor
not
was closed
working
on
on
Shabbat,
Shabbat.
yeah.
It's amazing. But they were talking about the man, his name was Burla, Albert Burla, who then became a medicine maker.
He became the CEO of Pfizer.
But I'm talking about another family there, and Baruch. Somebody by the name of, his second name was Baruch, was a boyfriend of this girl Esther. Esther was about 20, and she had a boyfriend. And she was taken, and I don't know why, maybe because she was pregnant, for research. And she finds herself in an operating room, and the German gynecologist is working on her. And she cries to him, "Leave me alone. I want to go home, and I want to have a family. Please, please leave me alone." Didn't even answer her. And then he's called away by a telephone call. And in comes a doctor who is Jewish. I don't know how she knew that he was Jewish, but he had to continue closing up the job. And she cries to him, "Please leave me alone. Please. Please, I have a boyfriend. I want to get married." And he just tells her, when he finishes the job, he tells her, "One day you will be grateful to me." He finishes. Esther survives the camps, goes home, finds her boyfriend who wants to marry her. And she says, I cannot. I cannot because I will not be able to. They took her, she felt, or she thought, or she knew that they wanted to take out her beitiot,
Ovaries.
ovaries. And he says, I don't care. I love you and I want to marry you. I don't care what's happening, what will happen. And they married, and she had some symptoms, and the doctor said, you are pregnant. And she said, no, it's not possible. But you are pregnant. And they have 3 children. So this is the big miracle story. But let me tell you just one of the stories, because I don't want to keep you here so long. 2. One of the stories was that one day when I was with the young people in Auschwitz on a Friday, I remember I think that I arrived that morning, because I didn't arrive with the children. I didn't want to be there all 8 days away from home. So I came I left Thursday night and came Friday morning. And somebody waited for me and took me straight to Auschwitz, to Birkenau, where we were supposed to be that day. And we were in, were you in Auschwitz?
Yeah.
You were.
2 years ago. 2 years ago.
Wonderful. So you know that room which has all the suitcases
Yeah.
and
They made
the
it
shoes
into,
and-
yeah, they made it into a museum. You walk through. It's
Yeah.
the barracks.
Yeah,
and
you
walk
look
through.
at its windows. But I think that in the same barrack, but maybe not, was also the cross-section of the gas chamber. In the white, like in gypsum, I don't know, in what, they say the gas chamber, a wall cut away, it's a replication, small,
Yeah.
about this size, and you see the naked people, and they look like this, like people climb on one top of another to escape the gas that was choking them. And the kids are there, and they already are dead. But look, Hashu, this is not important. What is important is that the guides call out, everybody, my group, our group, stand aside because another group is coming up to the second floor and we cannot go down and up at the same time. When they will come up, we'll go down, okay? So I am standing, like let's say you are standing, and next to me is a terribly tired, and next to me stands a girl leaning on the flagpole. She's one girl who was holding a flag. And now she's standing there very tired, a young kid, 17 years old. And we're waiting, and then we see a group of people, men, women, coming and dispersing among to view whether it's to see. And one man comes in, and this is where I'm standing, let's say. He comes and goes there, and then he changes his mind. He turns around and comes and stands next to me, this far away. A young man, not young, maybe 45, 50-year-old man, in a leather coat, well dressed, and he stands like this, faces me, and we're standing very close to each other. And he stands and looks at me and looks at me and looks at me and doesn't say a word. And I'm getting tired of it, and I say to him, "Where are you from?" in English. And he says, "Portugal." Good. Stand some more. And I say to him, "Are you Jewish?" And he said, "No." And then after a while of looking more and standing, he says to me, "Where are you from?" And I say, "Israel." And then he stands one more second and bends down, takes the edge of the flag, it falls down and the edge is there. He bends down, puts it to his lips, give it a kiss, turns around and walks away. When I'm telling you this now, I could cry. What does it mean? What did this mean? What would it mean to you?
Maybe he was so overcome that
Why was he over? With what?
you are Jewish and this was done to, and you symbolize what was done to the Jewish people. He was overcome with emotion.
I didn't know what I was thinking. I just know that this is something once in a lifetime. And I tell you this, and the next story that I'll tell you. Okay, let me tell you the other thing.
Please.
Okay. So this had a very big impact on me. I don't know, may have been people, when I told this story to somebody, I don't talk about it much. This somehow, because I didn't know what it really meant. This was without words, like a silent movie. But I'll tell you later what I thought it meant. But there was another incident much earlier, much earlier. We arrived in America, I arrived in Khust, in my town, and met my mother, and stayed in Khust maybe a month, because I couldn't leave, because I had the infection in my leg. What do you call those infections?
Like an ulcer?
No, here it's a red, it's an infection of the skin.
Cellulitis. Most probably cellulitis.
Maybe.
Cellulitis, yeah.
Anyway, they didn't have antibiotics at that time. It was 1945.
And how old were you now? In 1945, how old were you?
18 years old. And they made me, the doctor who saw it, made me put some cold compresses with something that we knew there, some acid, something, and my feet up all the time, but I couldn't leave. They didn't let me get off my legs, so we stayed there. So altogether we were there maybe a month, or 3 weeks, a month. My middle sister already ran away after a week, the one with whom I was in Auschwitz. She could not stay living there with those goyim who took robbed us of every last thing that we had in our house. And she wanted to leave, and she left. We hired her, a guy, a farmer somewhere on the border, who smuggled her over to Romania, and we had somebody in Satmar there, cousins, and she went there. But we had to stay there, and my sister came back, and that was fine. And then we left Khust. We were also brought over to the border, smuggled over, and we spent, this must have been June, July, 45. And then the holidays, we went to Bucharest, Lokhashu. The holidays, the Jewish holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, we reached Satmar. We wanted to be there on Satmar because it was a Jewish town and we had cousins there, and we wanted to go to shul and have a first time a real holiday. And we found ourselves without a Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, being able to stay any place. A mother with 3 children who survived the Holocaust and have no place to be on a Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. It was so sad. And then my cousins who were there, they didn't have room for us in their home because there were many of them. They got one room, and whoever was in their group had to have it. We didn't. But my cousins knew a young couple who had survived, who were childless, and they survived the Shoah in Budapest, somewhere hidden with Goyish papers. You know, people could in Budapest hide. And they came back to Satmar, where they were from, And they had money because they didn't go away, and they made money, and they had enough. And so they were told that there is this mother with 3 children and have no place to be. So they hired my mother to run their yontif, to cook for them and keep, to be the balabusta on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And that's how we stayed there, and it was okay. And then we went to Budapest because we decided, now, nobody knew where they want to go to. Nobody who was there at that point had any notion of where it is possible. There's no television, no newspaper, no telephones. Where are we going to from here? My father is not heard about yet. And so we don't know where he is. So what happened, we made a decision around that time that we are going to German DP camps, because there at least we'll be among Jews, in Germany, but among Jews. So we started out through Budapest. The next stop would be Prague, and my 2 sisters, who were now 22 and 19, no, 23, 20, they would go ahead to Germany and find a place for us. And my mother was taken in Prague to a sanatorium, to a hospital. And they said she's staying here because she needs to be treated. She was at that time 48 years old, and she was very weak. Every tooth, this will interest you, I don't believe I told you this. When she came back, when she was examined in Prague, they found that every tooth that she had in her mouth, and she had teeth, she didn't have dentures, were turned around 180 degrees. Every tooth. She had not an ounce of minerals in the whole year, or proteins, as I told you. Anyway, but what happened in Budapest was everybody who was leaving from Eastern Europe, from Eastern Europe, and wanted to go westward, and everybody wanted to go westward. We didn't know that when we were liberated, where we could be. But now we know, we find other people and we hear things, and we know that's the way to go. So we go through Budapest. And one morning on a Sunday, I remember, my mother is sitting on her little bed. There are many, many little metal beds. This is a big refugee center in Budapest. And she wants to tell us something. Okay. So what does she want to tell us? So the 3 girls are sitting at her feet. She's sitting on her bed like this. And we are sitting in front of her. And she's telling us a story that on the day that we were running away from Birkenau, and they just had taken my mother away from us. They took to the labor camp. The same day, it's such a strange coincidence. Next, I told you there was an A lager and a B camp and a C camp, and we were in the C camp. And after the C camp, there's another camp, but very little, and about 5-6 barracks. And we had 32 barracks. So this is a little thing. A man leaves that barrack there, comes over to the fence, to this wrought iron electrified fence, stands on the other side of it, and this is the sea camp, where this is the road, and these are the barracks there and there. In the middle is a road, and girls, women are walking there. And this man calls out to one of them, "Come here, talk to me, I need to talk to you." And she comes over. I don't know whether she said it whether he said it in Hungarian or Jewish. And he says to her, would you be able to tell me whether any women from Khust had survived and lived in the sea lager today? And she smiles at him and she says, "I know, I can tell you, because I am also from Khust." And he says, "Then go, please go, and tell those people that today 200 men were brought back from Buna Monowitz, it's a camp that belonged to Auschwitz. In the surroundings of Auschwitz, there were some 49 plants, factories, industrial things. There was Buna Morowitz had a coal mine. Because, and if you have read Bruno, and what is his name? Primo
Levi.
Primo Levi's
yeah.
book, To Be a Man. He was working. He was an engineer, chemical engineer, and they took him to work in the laboratory near the coal mine. They had wanted to produce tires, rubber tires, out of coal. That's what they were working on, because they couldn't get, there was a serious shortage of rubber, how do you call it? Latex?
Latex, yeah.
Couldn't get latex because they were in war situations in Asia and I don't know, Africa, where they grew. And so they thought that they could convert coals into latex. And he said, not a single tire ever came out of those laboratories.
Wow.
from coals. So this man here tells the girl, today tell the people that 200 men, Hungarian Jewish men, came back from having worked for 5 months in the coal mines. His face was totally black from coals. His body was depleted of any ounce of flesh, was all just bones. You could see through his body, all bones. And he says, tell them that we were working in the coal mines. And 20 of those 200 men are from Khust. And I am also from Khust. My name is Wolf Friedman. And tell them that tomorrow we won't be here anymore. This was my father.
Sure.
And we know when he was brought back from Buna Monowitz to Auschwitz to be killed. And he knew they knew 200 good, strong Jewish men knew that they are coming here to be killed by gas. That's what my mother said. And we are listening to my mother. And I look around and I don't feel, I want to cry. And I see my sisters are not crying, we're just listening to it like we hear a story. What we didn't like him, we didn't love our father. I cannot cry for him. And then it took a long while, years, that I made this picture for myself. When a Jewish person, when a single Jewish person dies, then he dies, one die. And then a few of his family sits Shiva for him. And a lot of people, this is after I had the experience of burying my mother, sitting Shiva for my mother. And there are many, many who come and say to you, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry that it happened to you. That's what they show in their faces. Here, 6 million people were killed. All who remained alive, the survivors, are all mourners. And not one person came over and said to me, I'm sorry that it happened to you. This is a person. The one who came to Auschwitz and kissed my flag is one person who showed me. But I didn't even know that. I'll tell you this, the last story, which I wanted to start with, which happened much earlier, like 80 years earlier. When I arrived, when we were in Prague, remember I told you my mother was in Prague, I let you go.
No, please continue. Oh, you must continue. Please, this is, Gita, this is unbelievable. This is such a zchut to hear you.
So, we were going to Germany. We were going to Germany to the DP camps. My two sisters, so I remained in Prague, my mother, and my two sisters took a train and we went to the border, straight border, like this is Czechoslovakia, like almost a circle, and straight line west where the train travels to the border of Germany. And there the train stops because it doesn't go into Germany. They have very poor relationships, Czechs and Germans, for right reasons. And then this train goes I don't know where, and they get out of the train, and as it used to be, previous times, Israel would send people who were part of a mission called Bricha. Bricha is escape. And these people would help Jewish young people who were crossing all these borders from all over to go to Germany. They wanted them to go to the West because they knew that soon this will be a communist area. But the Bricha didn't come. because the war just broke out in Germany, in Israel. It was 1940, no, it didn't yet, but it was winter, it was Christmas time. Christmas time. And it was very bad weather, it was snowing or raining or something. They get off the train and there are waiting, a lot of people are waiting for the train to come, to arrive. They were awaiting somebody. And this group of people came. They were from our area, from Karpato Rus. And immediately, we have a nose to see or smell people who are Heimish, who belong to or come from places like where we were. They came over immediately, they start talking Hungarian, and they asked, where are you girls going now? And they said, don't go, Loki die, stay here, come sleep over in our house. Hamish, very Hamish people, a little older than my sisters were. And a few days later we get a letter or a telephone call from the girls. We are not going to Germany, come here, take a train and come here, because we are settling in a town called Cheb. In German it's called Eger. There's an Eger river, and they say this is where the Sudetengebiet was. Remember about the Sudeten?
Yeah.
And therefore they chased out all the Germans who lived here. So there are empty apartments, you can get them very cheaply. And there are jobs here, you can work, and the people are very nice. Come, and we came. Okay, so we arrived, and they had an apartment, and it was fine. And now my dream of learning, of studying, came out. And I cannot do it in Cheb. I have to go to Prague. And I go to Prague. And somebody offered me a place. She was working in a store in Prague, and behind the store there was a sofa or some bed and a little sink and maybe a shower, and I can live here because it won't cost me money, because she was working there. Good. Now comes my story. This is the story. I started looking first for a job because I cannot ask my mother to support me. We don't have money. We have to work. And so I answered an ad. I spoke Czech very well. And I answered an ad which was looking for a, what do you call it in English? Draftsman. Because I learned drafting. It's another story, big story, in the labor camp. It was a very special experience for me. And they accepted me.
Can I ask, Gita, how did you learn the drafting?
They brought me up from the factory where we worked. They made me design I was working on a lathe machine. You know what's a lathe machine? It's something where I go and here's a piece of metal, brass, and it was shaping this piece of metal into a certain item. They were things, spare parts for aeroplanes. And all day long. And he brings this, I worked the first week when I started working, I worked in the night shift. And when I finished the shift, I said, I survived Auschwitz. Birkenau, I won't survive the labor camp. Standing for 12 hours. First of all, walking for an hour, and then standing on my feet for another 12 hours with my hands up. Can you imagine? Can you imagine this? On one piece of bread in the morning, which we finish at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you go home at 7 o'clock in the evening, and you had nothing in between. Nothing. Okay, but I'll tell you the story. The story goes, so they called me in. I was very near the place, and I explained what I knew. And they said, okay, we'll try you out. And I went back. On Friday, that Friday, I get a call from a secretary, somebody, a woman, who tells me that the telephonist, the girl who handled the telephones, got sick. And so she's asking me, could I come in on Saturday to replace her? And I said, no. It's not work, it's only answering the telephone. She didn't know I was Jewish, she didn't know I was nothing. But she said, it is not work, it's really not work. Why can't you come? I said, I cannot tell you, because you wouldn't understand, but I cannot do it. So then she hangs up, and then she calls and says, the boss would like to see you. I said, good, I can come over. And I come over, and there is a big table, maybe like my dining table there, and I'm standing there where I come out from the outside, and he stands on the other side. And we are standing. He doesn't tell me to sit down. We're both standing, and this man looks like a very fine, gentle, 50-year-old man or more. And he says, I understand that you were told that we need somebody urgently, only to answer phones, and you refused to come. I said, yes. And he said, is there a reason to it? I said, yes. Could you tell me what the reason is? I said, I could, but you wouldn't understand it. He says, try me. How old am I? What did I say? It was
17, maybe 17.
It was the end of 1945. So I'm 18 years, 19 years, let's say. He says, try me. So I say, my family is from Carpathia, which is part of Czechoslovakia. He knows it. I only lost a year from, not here, where I lost 6 years since I left Czechoslovakia, but he knows the history. I said we were living in Carpathia, and then we went to Auschwitz. And he's quiet. I'm looking down. I was shy, I don't know. And then he's quiet, and I look up to him to see what's happening here. And I see his tears, his eyes are tearing, tears are running down his cheeks. And I go like this. And then I didn't even have words. What's happening? And he said, so there are still some people alive today. Of you, I had friends who were religious Jews, and I thought they killed all of you. That's the last thing that I remember. I don't remember how I left.
And he was crying. He was crying.
He was crying. I wasn't crying. He was crying. And I left. I know I didn't work. I didn't go into the place. I don't even know what the name of the place is or the name of this man is. All I know that what it meant to me, this was another experience which hit me, and I didn't know what it means. I didn't speak about it. I don't know what I did from now on. It's just one big blank. All I know is that he was probably the first person whom I remembered who showed me that it hurts me. And then, much later, I said, but why didn't I talk about it to anyone? And I said, because it also said something about me. At that time, we ate treif. There was no kosher food, and we were very, very hungry all the time. All the time. And I didn't feel, I was religious. But this is pikuach nefesh, we have to eat. But to get up on Shabbat and go to work, I mean, that is beyond all red lines. Shabbat. That's what made me suddenly realize how complex this story was. It said something about me.
And Gita, can I ask, when you were in America,
I'm sorry?
when you were living in America, when you went
Yes.
with your mother and your sisters to America, did
Yes.
anybody show you this compassion when they heard that you were from the camps, that you were in Auschwitz?
No, all right. Then I have another story for you. I was in Israel. It was maybe at the most 10 years ago, 19 years ago. I was invited to Berlin. This was already the fifth time. I was invited to Berlin because it was January 27, this month. January 27 is a big Holocaust, National Holocaust Day, not by us, but maybe the international community. When the Russian army marched into Auschwitz, Birkenau. And that they felt was a very big victory. And so they invited me to talk to some very high-level people, government people, to tell them about Amcha. I was working for an organization called Amcha. Do you know about them? Okay. For 28 years, I was their employer.
So just for our viewers, Amcha is an organization that helps Shoah survivors
It's not just help survivors, no. It's a very specific help. They provide psychological and social help for Holocaust survivors. And I came 5 years, 5 years after the organization was created by somebody by the name of Klafter, Alfred Klafter, Klafter, a businessman from Holland, a very good Jew who had organized prior to Amcha. He established an organization called ELA, E-L-A, which is a Dutch organization that helps the Dutch Jews survivors. And they did a lot of great things, Alfred Klofter. And then he said to himself, why only the Dutch survivors? Aren't there any other survivors? And he organized Amcha. And do you know what the word Amcha stands for? Okay. Amcha is a word which means your folk, right? Am Shelcha.
Am Shelcha.
Okay.
Your nation.
Your nation.
Your nation.
Right. Why did they give it this name? Because there were many, many terrible, terrible cases of terror in which if the first year, 1 year after the war was ended, in 1 year, 1,000 Jewish survivors, Jewish people were killed in Poland.
Yeah.
And it was a terrible thing. And so, because people came back to to find somebody who is alive, and they didn't come to do anything or and they were afraid that the Jews will get to ask for their properties, and people already settled it. They robbed us of everything, and they wanted to stay with the robbed things and not to give it back to the Jews. So they were very, very cruel. And they caught there's a cemetery in Kielce. You heard about
There was
Kielce?
a pogrom. There was the pogrom.
Yeah. A real pogrom. But if you go to the cemetery of Kielce, did you go? There's a terrible cemetery there, terrible cemetery. 2 kids from the Bnei Akiva, 2021, a boy and a girl were traveling on a train in Poland to come to help here with all kinds of projects and people. They took them off the train and killed them, Polish people. And they said, 1,000. And so the international Jewish community and probably the Jewish organizations decided to create a code word, Amcha. And the code word worked like this. You are a survivor, and you are living in a small town, or Warsaw, or any place. And sit there in some place, you're waiting online for to buy something, you're waiting online to get to a train or in a bus or anything. Somebody sits down next to you to wait for a train that comes. And you start talking, people are gregarious. They like to talk, and they start talking to each other, and this Jewish person speaks Polish perfectly. So he wouldn't So the guy who starts talking to him wouldn't know immediately that he's Jewish. But as they start talking, the Jewish person is supposed to say, within a sentence, Amcha, within one of the words, Amcha. And if the man answers Amcha, it's fine. You know you are safe. But if he doesn't know the word, then you go move over far away from him. I think it helped. But this organization is called Amcha. And I worked there, as I said, 28 years. I was on their payroll.
You were a psychologist.
I am.
I
I
know,
have a doctorate.
But you worked there as...
I worked as a psychologist.
As a psychologist.
I had patients. At one time, I had 10 groups. I, myself, 10 groups. A few of them were in old age homes, where I had a few, 7, 8, 10 people. I spoke to them in Hungarian or in Yiddish, depending on what their language was. I could speak to them Hungarian, English, some American groups, and individual patients. And then began home visits, because they couldn't come to Amcha, to the Amcha office, which was in, you know where the street is. It's called Rehov. Next, you know, Ben Yehuda, the next street, Hillel, Rehov Hillel 23 is our building. And so I would visit them in the house. And I always involved the family. Whomever I was treating, I involved the children or the parents, depends on which generation I'm dealing with. And it was so good for them, because many times those family members, to my big sorrow, were not as true, as good, well-meaning as you would expect. But, or there were conflicts between the family members, between my patient and brothers and sisters or children, between children. And I always tried to make this patient, this survivor, live with a lighter heart and die a little happier than he was.
Because you could relate, being a survivor yourself, you could relate. It was
very important for them. So when I was in Germany, and I was in a panel, and there were four people. One was somebody who belonged to Germany, Amcha. He was telling what Amcha does for Jews and for Amcha Israel, and the other one was I don't know what, and then I was the last one to talk. And now I'm coming, you asked the question whether in America, how it was in America for me. I'm glad you asked that question, because I told them here, I went through three years in Czechia after the war. And I went through 44 years in America. No one ever, and I went to college, and I went to graduate school. And the university where I studied, CUNY, City University of New York, on our floor there was another faculty next to psychology, and that was history. And I knew they are studying the Holocaust there. I knew historians whom I knew from private life, and they were there. And in private life, they never asked me a question about Auschwitz. And this was not much time since then. It was maybe 10, 15 years after 20 years. So it's not such a long time.
And they
wrote books.
They knew that you were a survivor.
They knew.
They could hear.
No one ever asked me. I did speak. I didn't speak in my house, in my own house, with my own husband. Never spoke about Auschwitz, because he never asked.
But how's it possible?
It is possible because there is a personal life that one has. And he lived in Berlin. And until 1939, January, he lived in Berlin and went through very traumatic experiences. One was that they grabbed his father, who has a picture there with a cylinder hat, with a child. There is the black frame, yes.
You can just show. This is your...
This is my husband's father. With my big daughter. But
if you could just show...
Okay, I'll put it back. Oh, you want to see it?
If you could just show the picture.
Oh.
This is your husband with your...
No. This is my husband's father.
Your husband's father. And the child?
A long time ago. It must have been 60 years ago.
60 years ago.
60 years ago. But I'll tell you about him. Okay. He, very interesting circle. I asked you about Rabbi Goldstein, right?
The chief rabbi in South Africa.
Yes. No, it wasn't. Yes, it was. If you can get it from what is that famous place where you get all kinds of in the internet, where you get songs and speeches and films and everything. What do you call them? No.
So with YouTube?
YouTube. He's on YouTube, Rabbi Goldstein.
I know him and I know his father very well.
Okay, but I'll tell you of what this comes. My grandson, I have a grandson. His name is David Beer. My middle daughter's son. He's now 23 years old, entering into 24. And he just went through the army and he's getting ready to go to college, and he's studying. And he realized that I am locked in and I don't know how to handle so much the internet, and I wouldn't know where to start. So he began sending me, first of all it was Rav Jonathan Sachs, and then other things. One day I get something with Rabbi Goldstein, and a German speaking, they introduce Rabbi Goldstein, and then they, a German very Hochdeutsch person starts talking about this school, a law school, which was supposed to have been created at the beginning of the 20th century, early 20th century. And the idea was there. It was to be a very special school where there's a German university of law, and the founder had the idea to establish a Rabbiner Schule. Do you know what's a Rabbiner Schule?
Yeah.
A yeshiva in the same law school, to have rabbis, and they sent people from the university, rabbis, to Poland to look for great Talmidei Chachamim in Talmud, in the Talmud, in the Gemara, who have studied, who know how to teach, how to learn the Gemara, to be in the same institute and to be there for the law students to turn to them if they have questions about the Jewish law, to be influencing them in their law learning. And of course, he said, this was early in the century, and Hitler was getting up. He wrote Mein Kampf in 1922. And so they don't talk about this school at all. It was just delayed. But they started after the war, and they established, and they did invite people, and people were teaching there the Gemara. And here we established so-called Hildesheimer's lectures. And this is the Hildesheimer's lecture of 2017, 3 years before now, when I heard it. And we have Rabbi Goldstein running this Hildesheimer's lecture. And it swept me off my feet totally. It would do it to you. But aside from that, and when I heard it the second time, I had to hear it a second time. And because I didn't understand the man's English, it's very high language, high English, German. And then I understood it, and I called my daughter very excitedly. Do you know what I heard today? This man, he never wore in Poland a cylinder hat. He wouldn't. He was learning in the greatest, my father-in-law, Zichrono Livracha. He never, he learned in the greatest Litvische yeshivas, in Slobodka and Grodno and Lomsha and a lot of others. And then when he reached Lomsha and he learned in Lomsha, he met a girl from Lomsha. He was not from there, and married her. She was my mother-in-law. And they settled in Germany. Oh no, he went, they tried to enlist him to come and teach in that university. And he went, and few other people went. And they said, fine, accepted, and now they have to build a school. And then Hitler came, and it was over, but he went to the community, and he became a dayan there, and to the end, till 1939, this was 1920 that he went there, but at 26 he brought his whole family there, and the kids went in famous Jewish schools of Germany, and they lived very comfortably. And then they wanted to put them back to Poland, the East German, the what did they call it?
I think it was called the Uitlanders. The Uitlanders, those that weren't German, they wanted to send them back to Poland.
But they called it.
Uitlanders. Uitlanders.
Okay, whatever. And Ostjuden. Ostjuden, that's what they call it.
That's right.
Anyway, but they luckily escaped that, and they went back to Palestine. And the last thing Palestine, the Jewish community there needed is rabbin. They didn't need rabbin, they needed workers. And so they accepted him in Germany as the Av Beit Din. He was the Av Beit Din, the highest in the Dayanim section, and fine. And he was the responsible. His responsibility was kashrut. And they stayed there and they liked it, and the children would have loved to stay there, but they couldn't stay there. And so they came to Palestine, to Israel, and they were dirt poor, had no income. And their mother, Mutti, had to bring the food, the soup from the soup kitchen, because they didn't have money to buy food, literally, because they didn't eat dayanim. And Yitzchak, my husband, went to Tachkimoni High School, which is a very good high school, finished it. He was 15, I think, when he got to Palestine. He grew. He was a little kid in school, and he suddenly grew. His pants reached till here, and they didn't have money to buy him fresh pants. And so this was his Shoah to come. And what happened in the end, that Mutti, the women have a lot of practical sense. And she said to her husband one morning, you know how to give chuppah and kiddushin, how to conduct chuppah and kiddushin. I know how to cook. Let's make weddings. Because the youngsters who came illegally or otherwise wanted to get married, and they don't have much money to get married. And if they bring me a minyan of people, we'll make you a wedding, a kosher wedding. And yeah, then they began having, and then the kids grow up. My husband studied in Haifa, in the Technion, and he was one to establish with other engineers the Tasiyat Tzvait, the military, how is it? Yes, military industries. And he carried out from its incept to the mass production the Uzi gun. And then they got some money from Germany back, like pension. And
that was the reparations?
Not only reparations. Actually, what was belonging to them was the pension.
The pension. Oh.
Because it was actually a government position to be a dayan or a rabbi or something. So they died, thank God, in a good situation. Okay?
And Gita, in all the years, did your husband ever know that you were in Auschwitz?
Of course he knew.
But he never asked you?
Never asked me.
And your children, you never told them?
Well, Yael is the one whom I speak to mostly about this.
But when they were growing up?
And she said, but I knew from my, I said, but did I speak to you about it in front of Abba? Did I ever tell you, No, I don't know where I know it from, but I know where they know it from. Because we had in Borough Park, my mother had bought, once she got into also some kind of money from Germany, and she was working, and she put money aside, and she got Social Security, Baruch Hashem. And one day, she had enough money to buy a little house. Until then, she lived in rent in an apartment, a large apartment, and she immediately rented out 2 rooms to 2 Holocaust survivor young men, and she also prepared food for them. She always worked, and she had a little girl to take care of, the little girl was my oldest sister's. Her name is today Chaya. She was Evelinke. And because she was born to my sister, where her father died of a stroke, when my sister was in the 3rd month of pregnancy, in Czechia, in Keb. Almost a year ago now, in January 26th of 2020, the German president and an entourage came to Jerusalem to memorialize the day, or remember the day when the Russian army liberated Birkenau, Auschwitz. And this became some kind of a general Yom HaShoah, day of the Holocaust Day. We celebrate it in May, but this is another date, important date. And the German president, His Excellency, the President Frank Walter Steinmeier, came with his entourage, and he asked to see Holocaust survivors and speak to Holocaust survivors. And the best place to meet them would be, it was decided, would be the offices of AMCHA. AMCHA is an organization that provides psychological help to support to Holocaust survivors and social help. And I am a psychologist and on staff for many, many years. And so it was decided by AMCHA that I should be the one to speak to him. And I did. And he asked to speak about, not with me, but with the staff of AMCHA now, that he would like to hear something cheerful, something hopeful, something joyous, more than the things that we usually hear about Holocaust by the Holocaust survivors. So, I was sitting next to him. I was asked to speak in German, and not a very good German, but I guess he understood me. And about 2 months later, after long deliberation, I decided to send a letter to him. And this is the letter, okay?
And Gita, I just want to mention that you actually gave him your book in German.
I did give him a book that was written about me by a German journalist, a very good journalist, and she became a very good friend of mine. Her name is Adler, Sabine Adler.
And Gita, can you mention what you actually told the president when he asked you?
Well, let's see what I wrote. I don't remember. Okay. Okay, so yeah. His Excellency Frank-Walter Steinmeier, Bundespräsident of the Federal Republic of Germany, Berlin, Germany. Dear Mr. President, when you visited Amcha in Jerusalem on January 22nd, it was 2020, I was deeply moved for your effort to come and meet Holocaust survivors, and for your words immediately following the story of my liberation. And later, when I followed your talks, what caught my attention at the very beginning was the word Verpflichtung. Verpflichtung is commitment. That's probably the best translation. Okay, commitment. Verpflichtung. Since this was the first time I had heard this word regarding the Jewish people from a high German authority representing the German people. You sounded sincere and genuine. Thank you also for citing my words at the Bundestag. The reason that I am writing to you, however, is that following those 2 days of emotionally overwhelming events in Jerusalem, a memory popped up in my mind. This is the memory. 74 years ago, half a year after liberation, after finding those family members who survived, my mother, my 2 sisters, and myself. And while wandering in the area of our old home, searching for a place to settle, we realized that we could not stay there. The prospect of living among people who showed no consciousness of what we went through, and to express no compassion, even though we had been neighbors for so many years, many generations. Was frightening. We decided to go to the DP camps, even though it meant being in Germany. It was a chance of living together with our fellow Jews. On our way to Germany, the train stopped at the German border in a town in what is today the Czech Republic, called Heb, in German, Eger, since it was December and and the weather did not permit us to smuggle across the border to Germany. My family settled in Heb. I, passionately eager to finally catch up on my studies, which had been halted abruptly by occupying forces at age 12, left my family in Heb in order to seek studies in Prague. I was offered by a good soul to stay in the back of a store where I was given a cot and a shower for free. By then, I was 19 years old. I don't remember that I wrote this at all. In Prague, I answered an advertisement for a job in drafting and skill which I had learned in a Nazi labor camp. I was to start the job on Monday morning. On the preceding Friday, I received a call from the secretary of my new place of work asking me to come in on Saturday to handle the telephone, as the regular secretary could not be there. I refused. The secretary implored me to come because the work would be easy only to answer the phones. The phone. Again, I refused. I did not offer an explanation. The secretary hung up but called a few minutes later to say that the boss would like to see me. Could I come? I went. Too much?
No, it's,
Too much?
no, not at all. Not at all.
My hand shakes so I am very nervous.
No, no, you mustn't be. Not at
Okay.
all.
I entered an office with a large desk where a man, tall and pleasant looking, around the age of 50 years, was standing. At one side, and I was standing opposite him. He addressed me, saying, "You understand that we are in a difficult situation, and we have asked you to come and help us. I heard that you cannot do this. Do you have any reason? Can you tell me?" Why? I answered, "I have a reason, but I believe you would not understand it." Then he said, "Try." I replied uneasily, my head bowed. We came from Subcarpathian Rus, and we are religious Jews. We are not allowed to work on the Sabbath. We went through the death camps. There was silence. After a while, I looked up at the man, and I saw tears coming down, running down his cheeks. I lifted my hands, looking at him questioningly. He said, "So, there are still some of you alive?" I had friends who were religious Jews, and I thought the Germans had murdered all of you. That is the memory. I don't know what happened. after that. My memory is blotted out completely at that point. I know that I did not work there. I never even learned the man's name. All I know is that for years I did not talk about this memory because I did not know where to put it. In the Jewish tradition, when a person dies, when one person dies, when a person dies and is buried, his close family, spouse, children, siblings, and parents sit on low stools for 7 days in mourning. And many people who knew the departed come to express their sorrow. In the Holocaust, 6 million people died, and every one of the survivors was a mourner, since all had lost some or all members of their families. Not one, not even one from the non-Jewish world came forth to offer solace to the survivors. I knew much later that this man at the office was the first non-Jewish person who showed me that he felt my pain. And then you came. Thank you.
Signed by, and you wrote this to the German president.
What is this, Cycowycz? No, I sent it to him, regular mail.
Okay. Gita, it's really, really beautiful what you wrote. It's very special. Very profound and very special. It's very, very profound, Gita.
Thank you.